Ooh, before that, that's all.
Perfect. I'll hand it over to you, Jennifer.
Wonderful. Well, um, the goal of today's talk is to talk a little bit about why the conversation around AI is so critical right now. Honestly, I'm sure most of you are feeling it. And to give you a frame of reference to think about how you might recruit around AI and AI enabling roles to help you tell your story, which is a key way in which we recruit for any role in government, but also particularly for tech roles. And then ultimately to get you started in hiring strong candidates, translating tech resumes, closing a candidate, and then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. But I would love to take a moment and allow us to give a little bit of background around ourselves. I'm Jennifer Anastasoff. I run the Tech Talent Project. I started this work over 2 decades ago, working on figuring out how do we bring how do we bring folks from the private sector effectively into service work. And ultimately into government. In 2014, I helped start up something called the United States Digital Service to bring in technologists into government. And would love to give Cass Madison, my colleague Cass Madison, a moment to talk a bit about herself.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's great to be here with you all. I think the big thing to know about me is that I got my start in Vermont state government, and actually a policy person at heart, but ended up in state government and had a front row seat to some pretty high profile tech rollout disasters in the state. It really changed my view on what it takes to help government deliver well and the importance of having the right talent in the room. So in my role in Vermont in our Medicaid agency, I helped lead the turnaround of our health insurance exchange work, and our integrated benefits program, and just really learned firsthand that our work was way harder than it needed to be because we didn't have the right tech leaders in the room. So after about 8 years of that, I joined Tech Talent Project in October of 2019 and have been there ever since. And it's been such a joy to go out and try to find technical leaders and inspire them to serve, and then help government understand what it takes to recruit or empower folks effectively.
And we're glad to have you, Cass. So why is tech talent important, and what is tech talent? So any issue that you care about, whether it be healthcare or education, the environment, something else, it's enabled by systems. And candidly, often systems held together by the digital equivalent of tape and sticks and paper clips. And you've probably felt that. Just take a look at line 3 here. This is Health and Human Services in our federal government from a report that came out in 2019. System 3, you can see, is 50 years old, and it's such a risk and such a challenge to even talk about the name of the system. We can't even name the system because it's so important. And just reflect for a moment. Do you have a system like this in your own agency where you wonder what's going on with that system? Well, 19.2 million people in state and local government today are working to make sure that our economy is strong, that folks receive benefits, that our governments run smoothly. And very candidly, you all have been doing it for years with tech that makes it tougher, not easier. And so you all are our heroes. Our goal is to supersize your work. What tech talent does in order to be able to do that is we find the right tech leaders, the right roles in government, and then we work on building the capacity of both to deliver effectively and to drive effective public technology leadership.
And so we know that having the right leaders in government is critical. But we know there's some challenges in building a healthy pipeline into government. And so what do those challenges look like? When I first started this work, I thought going out and finding tech leaders and asking them to leave high-paying private sector jobs and join the public sector is going to be the hardest part of the work. And it honestly isn't. It is much harder to get technologists through the government hiring process. So key challenges, modern tech leaders aren't aware of the opportunities that even exist to serve if they want to give back. And if they do find out about an opportunity, understanding how to apply so that they can get through filters and get an interview is incredibly challenging. Navigating and understanding that hiring process and onboarding into a government role can take a lot longer than they're used to. And so many of these process steps are the things that stand in the way of leaders not only finding out about roles, but then joining government and being able to make a difference. Go to the next slide. But what happens when the right leaders do get into government? I think in our work over the past 4 or 5 years, we've seen some incredible examples of what folks can do from the inside. So take CIO of Pennsylvania, Amaya Kapayan. Not only is she helping to scale the work of Code PA, but she's bringing this concept of human-centered product thinking into work in her work leading underlying tech infrastructure in the state and security as well. Tanya Webster is the first CXO, Chief Customer Experience Officer for the state of New York, and she's doing incredible work. She and her team are making it easier for New Yorkers to sign up for benefits. And working with state tax experts in the past year, they were able to expand the Empire State Child Tax Credit for children under 4, which benefited over 500,000 additional children annually. And that's just one example of her great work a year into the job. And then you have federal CIO Claire Martirana. I'm sorry we don't have a picture of her here, but she's been instrumental in helping the federal government develop landmark AI guidance. And I think over the past year, we've really seen the federal government lead in a way that may not have been possible 5, 10 years ago on AI, which has been really exciting.
Absolutely. I mean, and basically, this is the question, right? Basically, actually hiring a strong tech leader can feel like a miracle, especially if you work in government. And that is where we have worked, and that is where many who are watching work. But what we have found actually over time is that finding a strong candidate that is interested in public service, it can take talking to almost 100 qualified candidates. That's true. Um, Helping them understand government can take some time. Helping them find roles and work through the government process, to Cass's point earlier, can take much longer. So I'm just going to pause and give everyone a moment to reflect and think, and please feel free to put it in the chat. What keeps you up at night as you are thinking about hiring technical talent? And that'll help us think a little bit as we keep going through. While you're doing that, let's just reflect on the fact that right now, many of you are here or listening to this because you're being asked to hire for AI talent, or you're anticipating needing to hire for AI talent. So to that end, let's just dive in and take a minute to think about AI specifically. Artificial intelligence has been around since the 1950s. It's been used in our government for quite a long time to do everything from analyzing traffic flow to facial recognition. And it's critical to have people in government who are focused on the needs of the public, who can ask the right questions. People use the term or the letters AI to mean a lot of different things right now. Sometimes people mean machine learning, which is where computers can learn without being explicitly programmed. So for example, where software programs use data and algorithms to predict future trends based on historical data. Recent interest has really focused on generative AI. So things that you may have heard about would be like ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or Copilot or many others that are popping up. And that's exploded over the last 18 to 24 months. People and companies are developing new AI products daily. And some of those products may solve problems and some of them may not. And that's a really important thing to think about. AI itself, the concept of AI is a tool, and it's a technology that can enable us to solve problems, and that needs guidelines and it needs guardrails. We can serve people better with tech tools, but until governments have the tech capacity inside, they're going to be unable to deliver on promises to the American people. So just to think a little bit, this is the 10th year anniversary for many of the federal programs that were created towards leading us and improving the digital presence of government. And for at least a decade, many of us and many on this call have been trying to sort of climb this new technical hill. And we've been working hard to improve how families and workers and businesses are served. And now that AI is being incorporated, we're moving from sort of climbing this difficult hill to it can feel like climbing Mount Everest, right? The stakes are higher. There's a lower margin of error. And the good news, though, and this is what I will say, is that we know the type of talent and technical talent specifically needed to be effective. We need people in government who can make day to day tech, data, and AI decisions that serve the public. Many people are going to be discussing for many years how to do it, how to regulate and engage with AI in just the right way. But many on this call are being asked to think about how to get the right capacity in now. So as you look at this is from something called the data science hierarchy of needs. We added this little bottom portion of the data science hierarchy of needs because many agencies, as we think about AI, we just need to be able to cover the basic tech and data needs initially to build the foundation for agencies to be able to deliver on AI and machine learning effectively and responsibly. And the truth is that while AI can seem new and shiny, it's part of a broader, longer existing technical challenge that governments have faced, right? That we need technical capacity and data capacity in government. We need to be able to understand when vendors or outside folks are talking about what is needed in government. Folks inside need to understand what that means from a public service perspective. And the good news is that over the last few years, we've seen technical delivery that's worked well. Child tax credits delivered directly to bank accounts, direct file where it's been easier for folks who need to file their taxes. Yes.
So I saw some folks put in the chat a little bit about the challenges of bringing talent into government, and a few of the comments are focused on what happens when folks actually land. I'm curious out there, if you all could share in the chat, who is actually trying to hire? What talent are you trying to hire as it relates to AI? And what parts of it feel different or new compared to maybe your typical hiring challenges? And that'll allow us to hone the conversation today. You can click Charity. There's a couple of things to pop up here. I think if, from our perspective, there are some things new about hiring AI talent around maybe some of the skills and competencies that you're bringing in. But a lot of the challenges that we hear folks talk about are the same challenges they've faced for many years. Number one, lots of folks in government are wondering what they can do to make sure they're hiring the best talent with the right skills and experience. And two, trying to navigate the challenges of rapidly getting the best individuals into those positions. Then when it comes to hiring, that speed emerges as one of the biggest challenges that governments are facing. Just looking in the chat to see the other things. Challenges folks are putting in the chat around bridging the gap between private experience and government hiring processes and government job descriptions. We're definitely going to cover that this afternoon as well. So as we were putting that in the chat, and please do keep going so we can come back to it. I just want to share a little bit about the moment that we're in right now and why this feels like a really unique moment to be bringing the right folks into government. One of the things that, I've reflected on, one is I think there's a growing number of people, and we've seen this since COVID, who are questioning their lives and who are seeking work with meaning. And I think that started a few years ago, and I think that trend has not gone anywhere. And I think AI in a lot of ways have amplified that feeling amongst folks, because they're looking out and they're saying, okay, there's these new technologies being developed. Like, what contribution am I making as a technologist in the world? Am I working to make the world better, or not? And the folks who are asking themselves that question are folks who are excited about considering work in government. In addition to that, over the past year plus now, we've seen big layoffs in the private sector on the tech side, and we're continuing to see those layoffs. So numbers well over 300,000 at this point have been laid off from tech. And there's folks out there who may have been gov curious, honestly, for many years. It's surprising the number of people that I'll talk to that will say, "Well, I've always thought about work in government, but I didn't really know how to make the leap," or, "My parents were civil servants," or, "I spent time in the military and I've always thought about going back to giving back in government." Lots of people have a personal story that links them back to government, and lots of people are interested in finding that work with meaning. And so, one, I think there's a huge opportunity and that the right folks will say yes to this role. On the other side of that, when we're working with government, we hear a lot of myths that I think it's just worth pausing on, to kind of reset a mindset and expectation around them. First is the notion that folks won't take a public sector salary. It is true, some folks won't. But as I said earlier in the call, that's actually, when you find someone who's interested in work with meaning, that's actually not what I found to be the biggest barrier, what we found to be the biggest barrier. The right people will say yes to roles, even with a public sector salary. Now, it might mean that they're going to come do something for 2, 3, 5 years, um, and then go back to the private sector. But there are folks who are willing to make that leap. We hear other common things like folks won't relocate or they won't get the culture. Again, I think for the right role, folks are willing to pick up and move or to take lower salaries. On the cultural piece, I would say, like, this is a part of why onboarding is so important and making sure that folks have the right support systems when they land. But I will also say there's lots of folks in the private sector who have worked for big, complex, bureaucratic companies with legacy technology that understand how to navigate bureaucracy effectively. And so while they may not get all of the acronyms and agencies that they're going to encounter when they get into government, they've encountered environments which are really similar and can pull on those skill sets to be effective. So when we think about what is this three-pronged approach to helping government maximize the benefits related to AI innovation. First things first is make sure that we're recruiting the right folks into government. Second thing is we're making sure that we're working with other organizations to make sure that government leaders folks who are in government have access to the knowledge, skills, and tools that they need to make the right decisions on AI. And three, we're bringing those folks together to make sure that government has AI delivery capacity. Jennifer?
So, I mean, you may be wondering, and I've seen some of it in the chat too, where is all of this tech talent that is looking at coming in? And it's really hard. Um, we have a number of different methods, and I'll just share some with you for engaging with tech talent. One of those is Tech to Gov, which is a program that brings together leading nonprofits who recruit technologists into government. And they host virtual job fairs for mid to senior level technical leaders, folks like US Digital Response, Coding It Forward, Govern for America, and they all work with states, some work with local governments. A high volume of tech talent is introduced to government through these Tech to Gov virtual job fairs and forums. And the first forum was held in January of 2023. The results were actually really astounding, and we've had several since then. And what it shows us is there are technologists that are interested in government. It's also shown us a number of agencies actually organized hiring around the events. They used it as a forcing function. You can create your own forcing functions, right? But they used it as a forcing function to align all the folks that they needed inside. When they had come to the decision together that it was important to hire, they were able to then align folks inside around hiring around this event. And so those organizations, those agencies that aligned in that way, both state and federal, and actually some local, um, ended up leading to more than 200 hires to date that were, what the federal government called AI and AI enabling talent, everything from engineers to designers to product managers, as well as folks who explicitly called themselves and noted their experience as AI or AI enabling. Next slide. So what does that look like? And so we're going to share a little bit
Hi,
of from Patrick.
my name is Patrick Day, and I'm a chief architect at the VA. So earlier this year, I attended the Tech Talent Job Fair just out of curiosity to see what was available. And within 2 weeks, I had a job offer with the VA. I was definitely excited about the impact, but I think I was more intrigued about the possibility of serving my country. I have family members, I have kids in the military, so being able to give back was appealing to me. Right now, the project that I'm really working on is helping veterans enroll in benefits. Most of the time, a veteran may not actually use a benefit that they're entitled to because they don't even know it exists. And that will be a huge game changer. I have a 2-year appointment with the government. So my goal is to make the biggest impact as possible on millions of veterans' lives.
All right. And I will just say I love the Patrick example as a transition as we dive into some lessons learned about what it takes to hire technologists effectively. And that we had been talking to Patrick for several years as his interest in joining government grew. And as he mentioned, he went to this hiring fair and didn't know walking in that he was going to say yes. But I think there were some critical things here that enabled um, the agency who was present to capitalize on the excitement and momentum that he was feeling at that moment and to turn him over into hire. And those are the things we want to focus on today. So, um, I think there's 4 key things here around hiring effectively that we want to dig in on. One is the importance of telling a compelling story. We've talked a little bit today about folks who are really interested in turning over from maybe work in a private sector that might not be totally meaningful or fulfilling for them into a career that they find meaningful. And the key in helping them see themselves in a government role is being able to tell the story of impact. So we're going to dive in a little bit more there. The second piece is helping them find their motivation, helping them find their personal why, and being able to connect that to the role that you're trying to hire them for. The third is being able to translate a technical resume. And we'll get into some detail on this, but there's some big differences between private sector and public sector resumes. And it's not always easy to navigate the differences in the two. And folks who submit their resumes from the private sector to a government job might be highly qualified, but for folks in HR and others who are reviewing resumes, it might be hard to tell that from the information that they're submitting. So we want to spend a little time on resumes. And then we're going to talk about how to close a candidate effectively, because there's so much that is possible and that can also go wrong in those final moments of offering a candidate. And we want to make sure to dig in there and talk about what it takes to close them well. You can click through the animation here, Charity. Thank you. Okay, so let's start by talking about telling a story. And when you're telling your story, there's really 3 things that you want to think about. One is the ability to be specific about the roles and requirements for the roles that you're hiring for. 2 is speed. One thing that I found in this work is that once people are ready to make a job change, they're going to make a job change no matter what because their mindset has shifted, and it's either going to be the role that you're hiring them for or something else. So being able to move quickly is really important. A best practice is to hire folks in the private sector in 30, maybe 60 days, which can be tough for government. But know that once you have momentum with a candidate, it's really important to maintain it. And then the third piece, which is really important for everyone, is making sure that you can scale these hiring processes. Because in an ideal world, it's not just that you're getting all your ducks in a row and getting folks aligned to be able to hire for one role really effectively, but to be able to do this again and again every time you hire a technologist. Go to the next slide. So let's start with the pitch. You can click through this animation as well, Charity. So when we talk about the pitch, we're really talking about a few key components. The first is introducing yourself and talking about what you do. And I think when you're developing this piece of the puzzle, it's really important to think not only the big picture about what your agency does, which is a part of the purpose piece here, but what's your personal why? And spending a few minutes reflecting for yourself on why you're doing the work that you're doing, what brought you to this work, and like what gets you through the hard days, because we all have them in government, the days when you could walk away but you don't because you feel so tied to the work. And so really understanding that and being able to articulate that for yourself is going to be probably the most effective component of connecting with a candidate authentically and turning them over into a hire. The second piece of your pitch is getting clear on what problem your agency or the role is trying to solve and how your organization fixes that problem. And then what impact is there if you achieve the goals that you laid out? So maybe you're recruiting somebody for your Medicaid agency, and you can talk about how delivering technology effectively is going to allow thousands or millions more children to get the coverage they need to stay healthy. Anchoring in a story like that is going to make your pitch really effective. Go to the next slide. And I think the key thing here is the other way you could look at it is, what do you want someone who's completely new to government or to your agency to feel about the work that you do? And so as we're doing this, if you could just take a quick moment to share your thoughts in the chat. For you, what's the big takeaway? What do you want people to understand about the impact they can have working in your agency? And think specifically about benefits to people. And then once you get your pitch down, and everyone on your team should have one, you want to get into a deeper conversation with the person that you're trying to recruit. And this is really about getting curious and asking lots of questions. So understanding what the motivation is for the person, why are they applying for the job? What are their previous experiences with government? How do they think about government? What might their why be, and being able to pull that out for them. Trying not to get too bogged down in details. You want to be able to give them specifics about the role, but when you're trying to actively recruit someone, what's going to change them, what's going to get them to yes is how they feel about the role. And there's lots of times for all the details after. You want to be able to avoid jargon. I think this is really challenging for government. There's so many acronyms, and it can be really easy for someone coming in from the private sector to feel overwhelmed, or to feel like they should understand something that they don't when you're using jargon. So try to keep that out of your conversation. And then, like we said, speak personally wherever possible. And go to the next slide. So when you're having a conversation with someone about motivation, they're going to say some things to you. We've heard some things come out, and thinking ahead of time about how you plan to respond. So you might talk to someone and they say, I just really want to work on something that makes the world better, something that I can be proud of. And this is your moment to really link to your story of impact. Because the work in your agency and the impact that you can have on people, there's a clear connection there to work that they can be proud of. Double down on that. Other folks are really motivated by solving hard problems. Maybe they don't have a long-standing story or connection to this very specific mission of your agency, but what they really love is complexity, and they love solving hard things. And so if that's the case, you can dive into what kind of challenges are you facing as an agency? What happens when you have aging systems, or what is getting in the way of you being able to lead the transformations you want to lead? Those are being able to respond to them with those kind of stories are the things that are going to motivate them. Other folks, especially if they're coming out of a rocky part of their career in the private sector, might be looking for more stability. Obviously, there's lots that you can talk about there in terms of the dimensions of a government role and the benefits and the hours and things like that that can anchor somebody in feeling like, hey, this is a stable place where I want to be. The last one is just a cautionary tale. If somebody says to you, I really need a break, or I'm looking for something a bit easier, do not recruit that person. Because as we all know, that they're going to be uh, in some sort of a wake up call when they join government if they think the work is going to be easier or they're going to be able to take a break, even coming from the private sector. So the do's and don't list. So we've talked a lot about what the conversation looks like with a candidate. I will just say this, you get into some challenges here, even after having a good conversation with a candidate. If they go to apply for your role and find the process too difficult to navigate. You know, you don't want to be turning qualified people away because their resume isn't in the right format. And so we'll spend some specific time talking about resumes, but just to say, like, we've seen this happen in a lot of places where you get someone really excited, they submit an application, their resume isn't in 12-point Times New Roman font or isn't the exact number of pages, and they just get weeded out from the get and never even get an interview. But the do list, just to reiterate, you do want to emphasize the work and the projects that you're proud of and the impact they can have. You want to assume that they aren't going to, they don't know anything about government and that you're going to have to explain some things to them. You want to do that in plain language. And you want to make sure that you're clearly communicating with them throughout the recruiting and hiring process. Jennifer, you talk a little bit about resumes and roles.
Yeah, and just looking at the time, I think what I'll do is we'll talk a little bit about how these bucket, and then we'll jump to what it looks like to close a candidate. Um, but thinking about like to help bridge the gap between public and private sectors, some of the gap that Cass spoke about, we've bucketed the government job classifications that we've seen into themes and skills that people tend to hire for in the private sector. So looking at mapping these government classifications to private sector skills, it's not perfect, but it's a start. So just wanted to share with you some of the key roles here. So there's product management, and I'll just pull out a few. Product managers are making sure that we're solving real problems for people via government. And so generally, product managers are just making sure that we're solving real problems for real people. Their goal is to prioritize the people receiving those services or the product. Design, make sure that people who can use, when it comes to government, who use government services or websites can easily figure out what they need to do, that it's simple and intuitive. You might hear about user experience or user interface or front end development. User research is a term that there's sort of our frustration detectives. They find out where people struggle with government services, where they get stuck. Same thing is true in the private sector. Often we hear about differences between product manager or project manager. The product manager is really often the why person, right? The product manager might spend a day at the DMV and say, we've got to make this license renewal process not really feel like a root canal, and a project man and work on structuring that. A project manager would really look at that license renewal overhaul, and they're going to say, okay, here's how we're going to fix it within 6 months without breaking the bank. If you want to think a little bit more about how to do those translations and how that can be helpful, check out tech2gov.org. Hopefully, it's like Rosetta Stone for government tech hiring, but we're again not perfect, but we're getting there. Thinking about what tech resumes value versus what government resumes value. Tech resumes value brevity. They want 1 page or 2 pages. They're going to talk about government, they're going to have GitHub repos or websites potentially. They're going to focus on outcomes rather than job responsibilities, and they're going to target successes. What's really important, just as a reality check, like less than at least some of the 10% of top technologists just don't even have a written resume. And when you think about, even when they do have a written resume, you're going to want to know and dig into what various terms mean. For example, a vice president. Vice president in finance is someone who's junior. VP in tech is someone who's senior. A VP in fintech is something you're going to want to ask questions about. So jumping to government resumes, we know this. It values extensive info, every role, every project, committee, task force, training, publication, white resumes with Times New Roman, probably 12, maybe 11. We're getting crazy. And time served. So what we can do, there are different ways to think about reading a tech resume. Uh, that's something that we can do at a future session. So we're going to move on forward to actually what it means um, to close a candidate. And I'll turn it over to Cass for that. Close out on this spot, and then we'll jump to questions.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can you go back one slide, I think, for me, Charity? Yeah. Okay. So closing candidates is this moment at the very end. So you've gotten somebody really excited. You've reviewed their resume. They've had all their interviews. You're getting to the final stages and you're hoping they're going to accept a job. This is a really crucial moment. For folks at every part of the pipeline, especially important for folks in senior level roles to really nail this close. And know that when we talk about candidate expectations, that the clock starts in the candidate's mind the minute that they start talking to you about the role. And so one of the most important things is to have regular and consistent communication with that candidate throughout the process, the hiring process. And I hate to say it, but government is typically not the best at this, and is pretty used to kind of going into a black box when it comes to hiring and not communicating with candidates. And we've seen folks who start hiring processes and don't hear anything for months and assume they didn't get the job, only to get a call a few months later asking if they want to come in for a final interview. But by that time, they've moved on. So regular communication is really important, and it gets more important to communicate more frequently the closer you get to closing a candidate. You can go to the next slide. So when you're closing a candidate, some key things here. Money may be an issue, it may not be an issue. But what you're trying to anchor back to is, number one, the original motivation, like what got them excited about the role and the impact they can make. And then ideally, you are trying to find out what what the hurdles are to them saying yes before you even get to a verbal offer. So is it dollars? Is it health insurance? Is it relocation? Like, what are those things so you can work through them before you even get to that verbal offer? And then, like I said, anchoring back in the storytelling. Other things, in the private sector, folks are used to juggling multiple job opportunities. This is kind of a new concept in government, where you kind of expect that after somebody's gone through all of the interview processes, that it's almost like saying yes to a role once you offer as a formality. Folks in the private sector are often juggling several opportunities after they receive an offer. And so being able to ask questions about, are you considering other opportunities? What are the things that are key to your decision making? Would you be excited to take the job? These are things that are important to find out as early in that closing process as possible. Go to the next slide. When it comes to actually delivering that final verbal offer, figure out the best person to deliver that offer. If it's someone you really want to hire, having HR call might not be the right thing. Like, who did they really click with? A hiring manager being able to make a call and say, look, like, you're going to receive an offer, really excited about you joining the team, is something that can make all the difference and doesn't take so much time, but really increases the chances that someone's going to say yes. In an ideal world, you have some sort of a confidant. This could be a recruiter. It could be someone else on your team who's kind of built a relationship with this person over time. And it's somebody that they can think through their decision-making process with. And then finally, set a clear deadline. This is really important. Not letting things drag on for long periods of time, letting the candidate know right up front how long they have to accept an offer is really important.
Awesome. Thank you.
And with that, yeah, go ahead, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks, Cass. And just look, every hire you make is is all of our own individual steps, right, towards a government that's actually serving everyone that we signed up to serve. We're not just filling positions, it's about building the future of public service. And so really excited as we've talked, as you can tell, as we've talked about hiring tech talent into government, hiring AI and AI enabling talent. A lot of it is just figuring out how to hire effectively. So please feel free to reach out to Tech Talent Project or to also sign up for Reach Out for Tech to Gov if you'd like to sign up for a future one. Thanks a lot.
Thank you both so
Okay.
much. Let me just stop the recording.